Song of Solomon, Solomon's Song of Songs, chapter 8. We're going to draw from verses 6 and 7 right here. We're going to get into the beginning of the sermon, and I'll let you know right now, we're actually going to go through every verse of every chapter of Song of Solomon. We're going to go through all 8 chapters. I'm not even joking, but I'm going to talk fast, and you can hang with me, and it's going to be good because I felt like as I was going through this and studying this out, rather than trying to make statements and then contextualize them and then make the point and then move on, it would be faster just to read the surrounding verses. So it's going to be good. But where I want to draw from today specifically is looking right here in chapter 8, verses 6 and 7. It says, "Set me as a seal upon thine heart, as a seal upon thine arm, for love is strong as death, jealousy cruel as the grave. The coals thereof are coals of fire, which hath the most vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be contemned." What we're looking at here is the fact that this love that the Bible speaks of, this love in this song, the greatest song of all songs, the Song of Songs, we see here the Song of Solomon, but the Song of Psalms, the greatest message here is talking about love. The greatest thing that a man can find on this earth, set apart from Jesus Christ, is love. That's what motivates us. That's what drives us. That has driven many humans to do all kinds of things. The desire to fulfill this love that we have or that we need and that controls us, that drives us, rather, doesn't control us, it drives us. So what I want to look at today, we're going to look through this whole book here, and we're going to draw from it about 4 or 5 different points that we'll bring back up at the end. But specifically, I want to look at things that we need to keep in our marriage, okay? Not just the things that we start out with, not just the things that make us attractive to other people, but we need to make sure that it's those things that are so important to find a mate and to, impress a spouse and to get to know somebody and to make a good impression on them. We need to not be so quick to put those things away and to be lazy about them and lax about them. How many problems arise in people's relationships that is just caused by just being lazy about endeavoring to keep the love and to keep in love and to move after love and to keep these specific things in our marriage. This is what we're going to look at today. So just a great passage of Scripture here. I love this book. I love reading it. And so what we see here just right out the gate is the fact that in verse 7 it says, "Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it." Okay, so true love that is, rightly placed, that is deep within, cannot be quenched. So many people you talk to today will say, "Well, I just fell out of love," or "I don't love them anymore. I don't think that they love me anymore." That's not even possible with love, okay? The love that the Bible is talking about is not a love that you just turn on and off with a switch, right? Love is not just an emotion. People think that it's just a 4-letter word that you say and it's just an emotion and you can, move it from one thing to the next or one person to the next. But this love that we're talking about in the Bible here cannot be quenched. Not only can it not be quenched, it cannot be purchased. It cannot be bought, which is to say you cannot make somebody love you by showering them with all kinds of gifts and all the money in the world. You could sell everything that you have and you could give it all over. And if that were possible to buy love, it would surely be contemned. It would be worthless. If it could be bought for any price, it would be worthless. It's unable to be purchased by any price. What we've got here in the Song of Solomon is a clear picture of a couple in love. And this is a married couple, okay? We're not going to, make any bones about it here. This is a married couple, a couple that ends up getting married, okay? I'll put it like this. And the love here is illustrated as the drive propelling us through all aspects of life. As I read this book, I could not help but see the many aspects of life that this couple went through, okay? Almost a journey. And so we're actually going to look at this in a very literal way today, and we're going to break this down. And there's, you've read this book, I trust, and you may have a different angle on this. You may have a different approach on this. This has been preached multitudes of times by multitudes of men, probably several different ways. But today we're just going to look at a literal approach to this book. And we're going to see what we can draw from it from these two that are in love. This is a back and forth dialogue of two that are in love. But the first thing that I want to let you know is that love is important to God. Okay, somebody will say, "I don't care about love. I don't need love. Love doesn't do anything for me." Love is important to God, and it is important that we understand love. In 1 John 4:8, you can turn there, just a couple of verses outside of the Song of Solomon today. In 1 John chapter 4, starting in 8, 1 John 4:8 says, "He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. In this was manifested the love of God towards us, because that God sent his only begotten Son into the world, that we might live through him. Herein is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we ought to love one another." Friend, you can't even be saved without understanding the fact that God loves you so much. Okay? You say, well, all I need to do is just believe that Jesus is who he said he was. He died on that cross and rose again, and that's what I need to trust to be saved. Surely, but how do you know who God is if you don't understand the love that he had? How do you read Romans 5:8 and not understand that he died for you? How do you read John 3:16 and not understand that he died for you, right? It's the love that God has, not because we loved him, but because he first loved us. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Amen? So this right here just illustrates how important love ought to be in every one of our lives, specifically as a believer, understanding that God loves us. And then therein, what does that do? It says we ought to also love one another. It's amazing the scores of problems that would be solved if people would just have a little bit of love and care and compassion for other people. Not even just within their homes, but just in general. And Christians, for sure, ought to understand this. Jesus, of course, was tempted by a lawyer. If you look in Matthew chapter 22, and the lawyer has asked him, hoping to, entrap him, trip him up, tempting him, which is the greatest commandment? Of all the commandments, of all these things, which is the greatest? In Matthew 22, verse 36, he says, "Master, which is the great commandment in the law?" Jesus said unto him, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." You see how important love is, how pivotal it is, how meaningful it is. In fact, that if we could keep any of the law, which is hard for us to do, love is right there. If you can just focus on love, loving God and loving others, how many other commandments would be totally unnecessary, would be deemed just not even necessary, right? Covetousness and just all of them. Stealing and murdering and all that, it's not even necessary. How many problems exist today in Christian homes because love is stressed, right? Because this is not a focus in the Christian marriage. I will say to you, every problem is because of this. This is the root of every problem in the Christian home, the Christian marriage, is not understanding this aspect of love, okay? And I can expound on these in great detail some other time. I'm really going to try to stick to this so that we can get through this, but it's really incredible when you understand how pivotal, how key it is that we understand this as a Christian and that we bring this into our Christian home. What is one of the biggest things that you tell a person when you're courting and dating, and when it is that you're ready to propose or to marry or to tell another one that I'm going to be with you for the rest of my life? Those words that you want to hear, "I love you," right? "I love you." That's the big one right there. Sometimes it scares somebody off. At least that's how it is in the movies. But it's "I love you," because that's the key. That's what is needful. And if you don't have that at the onset, you'll never have it throughout. We're going to look at all 8 chapters of the Song of Solomon, and I believe this to be literally Solomon and his wife, Pharaoh's daughter. We don't know for sure. It's not laid out by name. I'll expound more on that another time. Again, we could go through this. That's my belief on it. If you've got a different belief, that's fine. There was likely a political gain, if this is the case, between these two nations, but make no mistake about it, true love was the prize. True love was what these two were after. It wasn't about a political gain. It wasn't about politics. It wasn't about anything like this. Love was the prize. And so when you go through here and you look at this, you see this chasing of love and this trying to acquire my love and the love of my life, this type of a thing. So about Solomon, you say, well, why are we reading here about Solomon? Don't you know he had scores of wives? He had queens, he had concubines, he had virgins, probably without number, all these types of things. Yet we know that. We know that he had 300 wives. We know that he had 700 concubines. We know that there were virgins innumerable. But in the Song of Solomon, we find a recording here of just 60 queens and 80 concubines and innumerable virgins. I believe this to be an early record proving the context of this song here. I believe that, this wasn't just penned in old age just because it sounded good or something that people would want to pick up and read. I believe that this is a literally almost a back and forth or a chasing of the love of one's life early on in his life. So the Christian home model is well known in this church. We've preached on it before. We're all pretty well versed on that, or very well versed on that. I'm not going to take time to look at that today, but obviously we understand that the biblical Christian model life today does not look like Solomon's life. Okay, we're not out here having scores of women. We're not out here doing all these types of things. That's not what we're gathering from this. We know that we're to have one wife, that we're to love our wife, that we're to rule our house well, that our wife is to be in subjection to us, and these types of things. We understand that. So I want to just mention here that just because Solomon had many wives does not make it right. Just as we see courting in this passage, and I do believe it starts with courting and dating and the pursuit here, just because there's something in there that you might say, well, I wouldn't let my daughter go here with a man that she wasn't married to. I wouldn't let this. That's not saying that this is necessarily the prescription, but this is how it is. And what we're seeing here is their love. We're seeing them chase this the love of their life and this romance, okay? So most importantly today, I want us to focus on the wife of our youth, if I can say it that way, the newness of romance, if you remember what that was, and seeing how important it is that those elements, seeing how important those elements are for an unquenchable marriage, okay? Because that's what this is all about. Remember, this love that cannot be quenched, right? This love that cannot be extinguished, this love that cannot be bought. What are the elements that we need to hang on to, that we need to stick to in our marriage? The first thing that I want to look at here, and I'm just going to start with this before we get right into here, is we need to know that the pursuit of love is lacking in homes today. And we're talking about Christian homes. The ungodly, the heathen, they're out doing their own thing, whatever. In Christian homes, the pursuit of love is lacking today. The divorce stats, these, we've talked about them often enough. The divorce rate in America is still currently right around 50%. The rate for a second marriage divorce is 60%, and then for a third marriage and up, it's 75%. And then, of course, that there's many of those that by that point just give up on marriage and they just start living with somebody that they're not married to. There is a statistic that I read that I was not familiar with. I've looked at these statistics for years. 15 years I've been watching these statistics and talking about this problem that Christians have in America, but I had never come across the gray divorce before. Have you anybody ever heard of gray divorce? Gray divorce basically is talking about those that are 50 years and older or 65 years and older that are making up a percentage of the divorce rate in America today. And so the divorce rate of those that are 50 and over has doubled since 1990, which is 40%. 40% of the divorces today attribute for ones that are 50 years of age or older. And then 65 years of age and older tripled to 15%. It was at 5% in 1990. 5% of the divorces in 1990 were somebody that was 65 and older. Today, it's 15% of the divorces are from someone who is 65 years of age or older. And you might hear that the recent divorce rate is in decline, that it's actually going down. People are not getting divorced like they used to. Well, I'm going to tell you that this is a misleading statistic because people are not getting married like they used to. So if people aren't getting married like they used to, then they're not getting divorced like they used to. They're just shacking up and living together, and this is what is acceptable. That, to me, confirms that the marriage, the divorce rate of 50 and ups or 65 and ups is increasing because it's the younger ones that aren't even getting married now. Right? So just because the divorce rate's on the decline and these types of things, it's kind of a house of cards here with these statistics. Let me tell you this also, because I think that this does factor into what we're talking about here with love and having the love of our life and having a loving home, okay? We need to know that 1 in 4 children live in single-parent homes in America. That's 19 million kids that are living in single-parent homes. And I think that that's harmful. I think that that's not good. I don't think it's good for the children. I don't think it's good for the future generations. I don't think that any good actually can come of that. And what factors into that is divorce and also non-married mothers. Both factor into that. Okay? Now, rather than ripping on those that are outside, as I've said, what are our wishes for our children? What is it that we train our children to do? Because that's what I want to talk to. I want to talk to our children, our young kids in here, those that are looking at getting married, those are wondering what is the expectation put on them to get married. Our expectation for our children is not hard. It's not some big mysterious thing. It's that they find love, obviously, in this church, starting with the love of God, they be saved, but that they find love, that they have a healthy Christian home. It's my desire for my kids, my son and my daughter, that they have a healthy Christian home and that they start a family. What is there greater than that in a man's life, right? That he should have these things, and same for our daughters, that they should be a part of this. Well, I'm going to tell you about the Song of Solomon here. That is this song. That's exactly what we find here when we go through this scripture and we see this. We find ones that are courting, they're chasing love, they want to be together, they have this love that's unquenchable, they come together, they have this love, and it goes on from there. So this greatest song of all is exactly this song. And I want you to know what makes it the greatest song of all. It's because of the value of true love. That's what makes this the greatest song of all. We've got all the Psalms here, and we've got all the hymns here. Yet this being the greatest song of all, because it's love. And what else does a man want? What else is it that has motivated men to do such crazy things as they have except love? That's what's made this the greatest one. Though metaphors and allegories can be applied. Now listen to me here. We're taking a literal approach. I've told you already. Though metaphors and allegories can be applied, we have clear teaching. Why would we overlook clear teaching to make some mysterious, analogous teaching or allegory here? Why would we do that? And I want you to show you just what an allegory is. An allegory is something that represents something else. And if you look back just a few pages to Ecclesiastes chapter 12, one of my favorite passages in Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, it's the book right before the Song of Solomon. So you're only going back a few pages. It's Ecclesiastes chapter 12, and I want to start reading in verse 2. And we'll read through 6. And I want you to see here the reference to old age. In Ecclesiastes 12, starting in 2, it says, While the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return to the rain, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets, when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Also, when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall burden, and the desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. And it goes on from there, verse 6, we go ahead and read that. Forever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. What we're talking about here is old age. We're talking about an old man. And he's feeble, and he's hard of hearing, and he can't see, and his knees are weak, and he's got no drive, and he's got no desire, and everything's bothering. This is what we see. But did it say that? No. What we saw here was that this is representing that. This is a metaphor that is talking about that. Now, just because the New Testament mentions the Christ and the love that Christ has for the church does not mean that we need to overlook the clear teaching here in this book and over-spiritualize it. Now, there is some spiritual application here. People can look at this and say, this is representative of this, and I think this really reminds me of this, and I think this is a great picture of this. Even in this letter, in this song, it's very poetic. So there are things that are written in poetry that aren't even just explicit black and white, but it's poetic. And so it's nice, and it's clean, and it's not vulgar and these types of things. That's what we see here. We see here this nice poetic thing. So just because, Christ loves the church doesn't mean that we need to make this all about Christ and the church or God and Israel or anything else, right? Now, as I said, surely there is an application for that. And I'm not saying that if somebody reads this and makes an application or somebody preaches on an application, then all of a sudden they're wrong. And, that's not the case. But what we're looking at here today is a literal reading of this. Now, a metaphor, as I'd mentioned, would be symbolically conveying a deeper theological meaning. You could look at such passages as Noah's Ark or Jonah or these types of things. And both of those are referenced in the New Testament, by the way, and they clearly have a deeper meaning. Now, and just because they even had a deeper meaning doesn't mean that they didn't literally happen. Okay, somebody might say, well, I don't believe that the flood really happened. That's just a story, or, same with Jonah or whatever. They really happened, but there is a deeper meaning to them. Okay, we have these referenced in the New Testament saying that this was symbolic of this, and this represented this, and this is why it happened. Think about the ark, for example. What do we see on the ark? We see salvation. We see one door. We see that door being shut from God, right? Which eternal security. That's what we find. Salvation in God and none other. So it's a great picture of what we can look at today metaphorically. So let's look at this now. Let's get right into the book of Ecclesiastes, right into the Song of Solomon. Same page there in my Bible. The Song of Solomon here. In chapter 1, what I want to see here, we're going to go through this, and I'm just going to kind of read through here and make a little bit of commentary, almost like a Bible study. It's really almost going to be like a Bible study tonight, so hopefully you can follow along and hang with me. And I'm going to expound very little, but hopefully clearly enough to make my point with these, okay? So starting in the beginning here, it says, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine. Because of the savor of the good ointments, thy name is as ointment poured forth. Therefore do the virgins love thee. Draw me, we will run after thee. The king hath brought me into his chambers. We will be glad and rejoice in thee. We will remember thy love more than wine. The upright love thee. Now, first of all, I just want to say here, a lot of people would say that this is not somebody that's courting. These are married people at this point. I can see why they would say that. It's talking about kissing and loving and running off together. The way I read this, when I see this, and in the timeline, if you will, of the whole book, which as we work through, I think you'll be able to see kind of where I'm coming from now at the beginning. I see this as ones that are courting. I see this as ones that, he has caught her eye and she dreams of his touch. She longs for his kisses. She longs to be held by him. She longs to be in the king's courts. She wants to be right there close. She's longing for that. This is ones that have caught the eye of the other one, and they're daydreaming. This is exactly what happens today. The first thing that draws people to have a relationship with each other is an attraction from across the room or afar. It's something that has sparked, an interest, sparked a pique, and it has motivated you to go and to talk to that person. And that's exactly what we find as we continue on here. In verse 5, picking up, it says, I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me, because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyard have I not kept. So what we see here, as I read through this, and I am making an application to maybe a modern day, if you'll allow me to do that. This one here, this woman, seems shy and embarrassed of her own faults. And I would just tell you that even as we start to court and we start to date and we put ourselves out there, are we not critical of our appearance? Are we not critical of the bad habits that we have? That's why we wear clean clothes. That's why we wash our face and do our hair and get a haircut. It's because we're critical of the way that we look. And we want to iron out the wrinkles and make a good impression. And so, you know what, we can look at this and try to read a lot into it. But frankly, what I see here is that she's dark, she's sunburnt, she is looking at her flaws. But let's look here in just a minute and see what he sees. Because we see what she sees of herself, right? She has this image of him, which is high, and she wants, to be with him, and she wants his kisses, and she wants, his odors, and all this stuff as we find it. This goes through here. But she herself has this super humble, almost a low value on herself because she sees her flaws, she sees her imperfections, which is perfectly normal. It's exactly what we see. In verse 7, it goes on to say, it says, tell me, O thou whom my soul loveth, where thou feedest, where thou makest thy flock rest at noon. For why should I be as one that turneth aside by the flocks of the companions? What I see here is that she seems to flirt and ask where to find him again. She doesn't want to be cast off away from him because of the flocks of the others and the ones that are around also. If they're feeding sheep, there's multitudes of sheep, many shepherds. She's out and doing these things. She wants to know, hey, where are you at? Where can I find you? Where can I see you again? And so it has motivated her to actually go and to make a move, if you will. We'll keep reading here. In verse 8, it says, if thou know not, O fairest among women, go thy way forth by the footsteps of the flock, and feed thy kids besides the shepherd's tents. So what you're going to find here, and we're going to get into a little bit more in just one second, but this is a back and forth communication, a back and forth conversation. And so she sees him, She wants to go make an impression. She wants to go approach him. She's looking at herself critically, but she makes, gathers up the muster and the courage to go and to say, hey, where can I see you again? Okay, so she has done this. Now, then we see his response, and he says, well, if you don't know, then, go over here by the shepherd's tents and let them feed over here. Essentially, that's where you'll find me, okay? In verse 9 now, here's what we see. We see his impression of her, how he views her. She has just come up and she has said, hey, where can I find you again? How can I see you again? In verse 9, I have compared thee, O my love, to a company of horses in Pharaoh's chariots, which is, the choicest, the best ones. Of all of them, these are the best. He says, you're really something here. In verse 10, thy cheeks are comely with rows of jewels, thy neck with chains of gold. We will make the borders of gold and studs of silver. While the king sitteth at his table, my spikenard sendeth forth the smell thereof. A bundle of myrrh is my well-beloved unto me. She shall lie all night betwixt my breast. He shall lie all night betwixt my breast. My beloved is unto me as a cluster of the campfire in the vineyards of En-gedi. So what we find here is that he compliments her, and he maybe makes some boasting for the future. He talks about the golden hems and the studs of silver and the things that he can offer. This is what I love. She's coming to him with herself, and he's coming boasting about what he can provide for her, what he can give to her, what he can do for her, right? So she comes to him. He answers her, this is where you can find me. He goes on to say, by the way, you're not so bad yourself. And man, maybe if we get together, this is what we can look forward to. This is the future that we can have. So he's seeming to brag here a little bit maybe about having some wealthy ornaments and the things that he plans to shower with. And I would just say this sounds like Solomon to me. I mean, you would say, well, I don't see how you're reading all that into there. It sounds like Solomon. It sounds like a man that has what he wants. He gets what he wants. He's confident. He knows who he is. And he's just going to put it out there. He's just going to go for it. In verse 12, we see her speaking here. Now, again, this is the back and forth. We see her speaking, and she is speaking also of a romantic life ahead. What is it that she says? She says, while the king sitteth at his table, my spikenard sendeth forth the smell thereof. A bundle of myrrh is my well-beloved unto me. He shall lie all night betwixt my breast. I'm going to tell you, this is all a man wants. And before you think that I'm, trying to go somewhere sideways with this, all men want is a wife that's going to love him and is going to give herself to him. That's what a man wants. He doesn't want a wife that's running around. He doesn't want a wife that he needs to keep track of. He wants a wife that is going to love him and hold him and be steadfast. That's what a man wants right there. It's that easy. And that's exactly what she says. He's talking about the gold and the tapestry and the silver studs. And she says, as the king sits at his table, I'm going to, the smell of myrrh, and I'm going to be everything, and I'm going to be right there. And at night would just sit, just embracing. Just embracing. I remember as a young man thinking about my future wife, my wife currently, before we were married, and just longing for like a Tuesday night at home. You know what I mean? Before you're actually like able to just live life together and you're dating and you're courting and these types of things. I just longed for a Tuesday night at home. These types of things. That's exactly what she is pointing out here. In verse 16 and 17, it says here, behold, thou art fair, my beloved, yea, pleasant. Also, our bed is green. The beams of our house are cedar, and our rafters are of fir. What I see here is a romantic conversation under the trees. This is non-sexual, in my opinion. This is two that are talking. It's not sexual. It's not saying that they're rolling in the hay or anything like this. They're just having a conversation, and they're daydreaming. And you know what? They're sitting under the tree, and it's beautiful, and they've got the canopy, and they've got the firs, and they've got the wood, and they say, this is great. This is just great. I would love to have this all the time, is what they're saying, okay? Chapter 2, we get right in here. And so what does it say here? And I'm going to tell you, this is maybe a little bit different than what other people would say. I believe that verses 1 and 2 here is spoken by him, spoken by the man. And you'll say, well, that doesn't sound right. I think it's the woman that says this. And maybe so. I could be wrong. But it says here, I am the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valleys, verse 2, and the lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. Why I believe this is him speaking is because it's talking about the rose of Sharon. Now, obviously, there are those that will make this a comparison, a reference to Christ. And I have heard it said, well, if this is a comparison to Christ, why would somebody do that? Because this is the woman speaking, which is effeminate, and Christ isn't effeminate, so that doesn't make any sense. Now, I'm not, advocating for or railing against that position. I would just say that for her to say that, it would seem that she would be saying that she is just one flower among many. The Rose of Sharon. Sharon is a beautiful place. Sharon is well known for being beautiful and lush, and the animals always go to feed there. It's the best, it's the choicest. There are beautiful flowers there. And so the lily of the valley would just be one among many. Not only that, we see here in verse 2 that it seems to be him speaking by saying that he's exalting her above all the others. In verse 2 it says, as the lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. Among all the other women, among all those that are out here, you are the lily among the thorns. You're above them. You're a rise above, is what he's saying. So that's why I believe that it's him speaking. And then in verse 3, we see it go back to her. And she does what? She returns the compliment in verse 3. It says, as the apple among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among the sons. I sat down under his shadow with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. We'll get into that in just a minute. But she speaks and she returns the compliment. She is like the lily in the midst of the thorns, and she says he is like the apple tree in the midst of the wood trees. You know, he is a cut above. He has fruit to bear. He is profitable. He is attractive. Think of the beauty of the full, lush apple tree in the midst of a woody forest, right? It's a sight for sore eyes right there. And she says, that's what you are to me. This is the back and forth here. And then in verses 4 and 5, I see here almost, it seems to be a date and a sweet embrace. And I want you to pay attention to this, guys. The sweet embrace that we take so seriously when we're dating, right? That we long for when we're dating. It says right here in 5, in verse 4, it says, and he brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner was over me, was love. Stay with me with flagons and comfort me with apples, for I am sick of love. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand doth embrace me. So this is that sweet embrace when they're dating, they're courting. The flagons are just jugs or pitchers. They got pictures, surrounding. They're wanting for nothing. They're enjoying themselves. They're enjoying their time. Non-sexually, they're just dating here. They're just courting here, just having a great conversation, spending time together. It is very meaningful. This embrace is very meaningful, and we're going to see it again later. And that's why I say I'm pointing this out, because we're going to see it again later. And so let me just go ahead and add to that. Notice the importance of touch in marriage. Okay? This was such a notable thing. It's spoken of here not only once but twice. Notice the importance of touch in the marriage, okay? If the guy's just coming home after 50 hours a week and he's sitting on the couch and crashing and he's not responding to his wife, if he's not showing any affection to his wife, if he's, just selfish and self-minded, which men, I get it. A long week will take it out of you. 110 degrees in August, it'll take it out of you, right? But notice the importance of that touch. When you were dating, when you were courting, you remember holding hands and how it felt to just hold hands, these types of things. So don't overlook that. Don't forget that. Remember the importance of touch in marriage. Okay, verse 7, he leaves her to sleep. Okay, and the reason I bring that up is because we're going to see this. This all goes back and forth throughout the whole conversation. Almost every point that one makes about the other, they make about the other one as well. So it's really neat to see the back and the forth when you go from chapter 1 to chapter 8 and you look at it all the way across, which is why we're doing that today. So she speaks, she returns the compliment. They have this non-sexual meeting where they're holding each other, this type of thing. He leaves her to sleep. And then verse 8, it seems to be the next day, okay? And it says, this is her speaking, the voice of my beloved, behold, he cometh leaping from the mountains, skipping upon the hills. My beloved is like a roe or a young hart. Behold, he standeth behind our wall. He looketh forth at the window, showing himself through the lattice. My beloved spake and said unto me, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone, the flowers appear on the earth, the time of the singing birds is come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land. The fig tree putteth forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grapes shall give a good smell. Oh, rise, my love, my fair one, and come away. So what we find here is this is actually her talking about what he is saying. She speaks the second day, and what is he doing? He's popping up at her house. She's there. He's outside the wall. He's outside the wall of our house. He's looking through the window. He's behind the lattice. I see him there. He's coming around. He is showing interest. He wants to see more. He wants to be with her more. He's coming around. And, this is part of that chase. This is part of that back and forth where he is interested in her and she knows he's interested. Okay? This is a great, lovely thing. This is exactly what happens even today when people court. And Christians can do this. Now, I'm not saying go to their house and hang outside the wall and look through the window and hide behind the lattice, but we have this communication that shows, you know what? I'm interested. I'm serious in this. I would like to get to know you more. I would like to see what the future looks like. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about kids. Let's talk about these things. Isn't that what we naturally talk about when we're dating? It's been a long time since I dated, but that's what we talked about. That's what we longed for. We longed, as I said, a Tuesday night at home on the couch. We would talk about a boring night at home because that's what we longed for. That's what we wanted. So what we see here is that she is speaking. He pops up at her house. She is speaking and she tells what he says unto her. It's a beautiful day. And then I want to point something out here. And this may not be in your Bible. And the main reason I noticed this was because I read this chapter, this actually book, many times these last several weeks on my phone with my app. And my phone on my app made it a little bit confusing. And one thing that helped me in my King James Bible is what's called the pilcrow. If you know what a pilcrow is, it's that backwards looking P at the beginning of some of your verses. Have you seen this? You can look here at, I think, verse 8. It's throughout. I mean, you can just look down. Verse 14 has the pilcrow in my Bible. Verse 8 has the pilcrow in my Bible. Do you guys have those in yours? I see some yes and some no. If you don't have one of those in yours, you're kind of missing out, because what that is, the King James Bible has this laid out in chapter and verse. There's no paragraphs in our Bible. Thank God, I believe, because I've read the NIV, which has paragraphs. I cannot make heads or tails of a Bible in paragraph form. Because this doesn't have paragraphs, this has pilcrows at the beginning of several of the verses. And what that is that would be like the next paragraph or the next statement or the next phrase. Many times in the Song of Solomon, it is that which you can use to differentiate between him speaking and her speaking. Now, not every time. There's some times where it just moves on to the next point and it's still the same speaker, okay? So I don't want to make you think like, oh, a cheat. That's how it goes back and forth. But it aligns surprisingly well. This is what I found when I read my Bible, and I was like, wait a minute. What I found was that I was reading a verse and I was accounting it to one person, but then when I read it in my Bible and I saw the pilcrow, I attributed it to the other person, and it made more sense. It would have gone both ways, but it made more sense when I saw it with that pilcrow. So it helped me out. So if you have those in your Bible, you'll notice them throughout here. Like every 2 or 3 verses, sometimes there'll be that pilcrow, and you're like, what is the deal with that? Okay, well, so that's what it is. So as I said, the pilcrow doesn't always denote the speaker shift. It is also just used for a new sentiment or a new paragraph. And in verse 16, there's something said here that I absolutely love, and I think it's paramount even throughout this whole book. And I love it. We sang Thursday night, I am his and he is mine. We sang that hymn, and that's a great hymn. But it says right here in verse 16, my beloved is mine and I am his. He feedeth among the lilies. This statement right here, I believe, is the surety that will carry each of these on throughout the whole experience here of this courting and into the seriousness of their relationship. It is this mindset, this thought that I am his and he is mine. Nothing is going to separate us. Nothing is going to quench this love that we have for each other. It's true love is what it is right here. Now in chapter 3, it seems that she is missing him in bed. What do we find here in verse 1? It says, by night on my bed I sought him whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. Now some would take this and say, see, they are lovers. They're in bed. It is normal to go to bed together, and then at some point she awakes and he's not there. I don't believe that's what this is talking about. Maybe it is. Maybe somebody's got that interpretation here. They see that application and it works. What I believe is that she is missing him from her bed. Rather than physical lovers, she seems to expect him at her window. Maybe he makes a habit of visiting her at night. Maybe it's normal that she would, that he would call her on the phone or send her a text message before she goes to bed. And it didn't come through on the phone. That's kind of how I see this here. Maybe it's that he was supposed to come by. Maybe she's gotten used to him being outside the window or doing a loving gesture, and he didn't come that night. Okay, well, what happens then? Start to wonder, what happened? Why didn't I get that message? Why didn't I get that call? Is something wrong? Does he not love me anymore? Did some other woman move in on him? Like, how your mind is just going to start just running to the extreme, okay? Well, let's continue on in verse 2. It says, I will rise now and go about the city and the streets. What kind of woman is this? He doesn't send that text message, and she's like, that's it, I'm going after him. I'm going out in the streets. Well, apparently that's what she does here. It says, I will rise now and go about the city and the streets, and in the broad ways I will seek him whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. The watchmen that go about the city found me, to whom I said, saw ye to whom my soul loveth? It was but a little that I passed from them, but I found him whom my soul loveth. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house and to the chamber of her that conceived me. Now, what are we talking about here? I have to think about this, that she goes and she finds him. She brings him home to her mother's house and lays him in bed, apparently is how this goes at the mother's house. And the reason I believe that this is in here, and what I draw from this, again, you may disagree with me on this, but I believe that this shows a new level of commitment or a new depth to the relationship, okay? This isn't just some cute courting thing. She says, you know what, we're gonna take this to the next level. I'm going to introduce you to my mom, maybe is how this looks, but we're going to go and you're going to be with me. I'm not going to let you go because you scared me. I was a little bit worried there that I was going to lose you. And he is the love of her life. She wants him more than anything. And she was afraid that she might lose him there. So if he should wander, she brings him closer. And I'm going to make a point here in this application as well, couples. When couples or a spouse seemingly tends to drift off, what happens so many times is they actually get offended rather than working hard to draw them back closer again, okay? The relationship cools down, the steam, goes down, it's not what it used to be. Maybe he's, a little more distracted than he used to be. Rather than saying, what can I do to actually reach out and draw this man closer? Remember, she went out into the streets to go find him and find out where he was, and that's not to say that he was cheating on her or somewhere else. But what this is saying is she put in the work to go and to track him down and to restore that relationship. Yet how many today just get offended? Oh, well, he's on his phone. He must not love me anymore. Well, then if he's on his phone, I'm just going to be on my phone. And before you know it, 3 weeks have gone by and nobody's even talked to anybody. You see how this kind of just builds up here? But that's not her. She loved him so much. It would have killed her to lose him. And so she puts in the effort to go and to restore him and to find him and to make sure that he knows just how much she loves him. Sure, that's what's needed in homes today, right? To be able to overlook these little trespasses and actually go out and to have good communication and restore that relationship. This is a sweet thing right here. In verse 7, it describes Solomon's bed. And you say, well, see, here you go. They're in bed together. It describes Solomon's bed. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't know exactly why it describes Solomon's bed here. Maybe, just maybe, in this, again, is maybe some speculation on my part, it just shows the next step in the relationship. It shows a little bit deeper relationship. She has taken him to her mother's house, to the bed in her mother's house, not to say that they've entered into a sexual relationship at this point. And somehow or another, then the conversation comes up of his bed. I don't know if it's from what others have told, a report, if it's what he has said, if it's what she's seen it, but it describes his bed in verse 7 here. It says, behold his bed, which is Solomon's. 80 valiant men are about it of the valiant of Israel. So this is a heavily armed and guarded place here, okay? They all hold swords, being expert in war. Every man hath his sword upon his thigh because of the fear of the night. And I think that this can be taken literally. I don't see that there would be anything said here, possibly other than the fact that he lives in a heavily guarded house, right? Why? For the fear of the night. King Solomon made himself a chariot of the wood of Lebanon. He made the pillars thereof of silver, the bottom thereof of gold, the covering of it of purple, the midst thereof being paved with love for the daughters of Jerusalem. Go forth, O you daughters of Zion, and behold King Solomon with the crown wherewith his mother crowned him in the day of his espousals and in the day of the gladness of his heart. So we read this all the way through here, and what we see is, what I believe that we're reading about here is the description of his bed, the gold, the silver, the wood, the gold drapes, maybe a bedspread or a mattress, the purple covering, maybe a canopy or even a bedspread, the love that is laid there, I don't think that that's talking about the multitude of women that have gone across that bed right there. I think it's rather talking about just the love that is imparted into the tapestry and the decoration and just the love that people have for Solomon, okay? It would be almost like in my family, we have a saying whenever anybody makes anything, whether we're grilling or cooking, is it made with love? It's not literally made with love, but it's made with love in there. So it would be to say like here that he is so revered, he is so admired that the offerings and the things that he has are even given to him of the love, even of the virgins that just want him to have these things. So it's a nice bed. It's a nice thing here. And then in verse 11, we do see something here that is a game changer. And I believe that what we see here is possibly the espousal ceremony with the crowns. Okay, and I think that's why these crowns are mentioned here. They are finally joined to the ones that they love the most, but it's not yet consummated. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be some expert here on Jewish weddings and the days and what this looks like, but we do know that it was custom that there was espousals and then there was the time of consummation, right? Even Mary and Joseph, remember, they were espoused to be married, but before Joseph had consummated the marriage, before they had come together, she was found with child of the angel, of the Lord, Jesus Christ, of course. So there was some kind of a dynamic here where they were, we can call it engaged, we can call it espoused, whatever the case is. We see that here in verse 11, there does seem to be some kind of a ceremony with these crowns. And what I would say is that they are finally joined to the ones that they love most. And why I believe this is because in chapter 4, we see here where he starts talking about his spouse, okay? And just because it's mentioning here now a spouse still does not necessarily mean that this is a physical relationship, okay? Best I can figure, it had something to do with that type of a courting process. We can read all about it some other time. In fact, I was tempted, or I am still tempted, that as we get into the New Testament on these Sunday series, Sunday sermons, I may be motivated to go back to the Old Testament. I very well may go back through the Song of Solomon chapter by chapter and actually expound, because every single one of these verses, you can find 3 or 4 points throughout the Bible that actually make reference to it. So it's really exciting, actually. But in chapter 4, here's what we see. I believe that this espousal process has taken place, and starting at the very beginning, chapter 4, verse 1, we see Solomon describing his beautiful wife, and he poetically boasts of his spouse. Okay, so let's look here. In 1 it says, "Behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thou hast dove's eyes within thy locks. Thy hair is as a flock of goats that appear from Mount Gilead. Thy teeth are like a flock of sheep that are even shorn, which come up from the washing, whereof every one bear twins, and none of them is barren among them. Thy lips are like a thread of scarlet, and thy speech is comely. Thy temples are like a piece of pomegranate within thy locks. Thy neck is like a tower of David, builded for an armory, wherein there hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men. Thy 2 breasts are like the young roes, that are twins, which feed among the lilies until the daybreak, and the shadows flee away. I will get me to the mountains of myrrh, and to the hill of frankincense." So what we find here is we're going through this. I see here that Solomon describes his beautiful wife, and what does he see here? Head to toe, he's looking over. He sees her hair as the sheep that come down from Mount Gilead. Imagine a multitude of sheep coming down the mountain, okay? And that's like the flowing hair. The eyes of a dove are just big and round and healthy looking. Obviously the teeth, the cheeks of a pomegranate between thy locks. Where is it that women wear rouge or blush on their face? It's on their temples. You think, well, these are the temples. Well, even across their cheekbones and up by their eyes, right? It's even today how women wear makeup. It's just explaining here and showing here her beauty. He is enamored with her. He loves her, even her appearance, and he just cannot help but not just gawk at her and stare at her, but just tell her how much he loves her and how beautiful she is. Man, what a great thing it is to do, to look at your wife and admire her beauty and to tell her that she's beautiful, right? I love this about you. You're beautiful. Whatever you want to put in there, it's important. It's important, and so much so that I see her just eating this up. So he describes her, and he boasts of his spouse. We're going to see that in just the following verses here. 3 times in a row specifically, he mentions his spouse. This is the first chapter that uses that terminology. And then in verse 6, it says, right here, "Until the day break and the shadows flee away, I will get thee to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense. Thou art all fair, my love. There is no spot in thee. Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse. With me from Lebanon. Look, from the top of Amana, from the top of Shinar, from Hermon, from the lion's dens, and from the mountains of the leopards. Thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. Thou hast ravished my heart with one of thine eyes, with one chain of thy neck. How fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse. How much better is thy love than wine, and the smell of thine ointments than all spices. What we see here is he cannot separate himself from her. He says, this is what I've got to do, and you're coming with me. Let's go. We're a spouse. We're going. I cannot put you out of my sight. I'm not going to leave you. And this is what we find in the Bible. We actually find where a man should take a year not to go to war, not to go to business, but to cheer up his wife. I'm not going to pull up all these other passages, but these are great substantiating verses for this. He loves her so much. He's going to keep her with him, take her around, keep her happy. He cannot separate himself from her. And then in 11 through 16, he commends her beauty and her chastity. Now, this is to say that a modest and chaste girl is very attractive to her husband. I don't know who puts the image out here, the idea out here that men love whores. Men love women that are showing it all off and, looking like, they're just, no mystery at all, no modesty at all. That is not what a man wants, right? If that message could get out there, that would save so much heartache if people would just understand that. So let's look at that. Let's see here in verse 11 of chapter 4. It says, Thy lips, O my spouse, drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under their tongue, and the smell of thy garments is like the smell of Lebanon. Well, that's a good smell, by the way. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse. A spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Thy plants are an orchard of pomegranates with pleasant fruits, camphor with spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all the trees of frankincense, myrrh, and aloes, with all the chief spices, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon. So what do I see here is that she is beautiful and she is chaste. She is pure. She is not defiled. She is modest. And there's a mystery there. He knows what she's about, but she's not showing it off. She's, walls built around her and covered up. This is what I see. What a beautiful thing that this is. She's very attractive to her husband, but she is yet shrouded in mystery, and he can't wait. What an enticement this is for the man to know that there's a pure girl that loves him and wants him, and he can chase her and he can wait knowing that she is pure. Why girls think it's okay and young women think it's okay, and why men even try to go for this when a woman is just going to give it all up the first night or the first week, right? What we see here is this is a long, even a courtship here, many months perhaps, right? We're not talking just one day, the next day, the next day, the next day. This could be many weeks or even many months where there's a courtship here and a marriage here now. And after the marriage, they're in love and there is still this sense of mystery. And he can't wait. He is so excited and he loves her so much and he's looking upon her and even relishing the fact that she is covered up, even relishing the fact that she is undefiled and she's protected and she's pure. In chapter 5, this is where I believe that we see the consummation. Again, people may disagree with me on this. Again, I am no expert in Jewish weddings or feasts, but in chapter 5, it says, I am come to my garden, my sister, my spouse. I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk. Eat, O friends, drink, yea, drink abundantly, O beloved. Now, this is poetic, and I believe that this is a very clean way, in an appropriate way of singing that he has come to know his bride. They have consummated the marriage. They're in love. He has tasted his honeycomb, the wine and the milk. He has tasted it. It is everything that he was hoping it would be. And that sounds kind of crass, but notice what it says here. It goes on to say in verse 5 that it says, I have drunk my wine with my milk. Eat, O friends, drink, yea, drink abundantly, O beloved. Why does it say this? Well, I believe that why it says this is because this seems to be the public confirmation of the purity of the spouse. This could be the words of the groom to his wedding party after leaving his nuptial chamber. You say, what does this look like? Perhaps this is such that they get married, they have this time, they come together, they have this feast, they have this party, they have this thing where maybe then the husband and the wife go and they consummate the marriage. And it sounds strange to us. What do? We get married, we jump in our car, we go on our honeymoon. Okay, that's what we do. But perhaps what they're doing here is they're consummating the marriage, and then he comes out and gives word that it's acceptable. And I don't mean to be crude or crass with this, but just think about this context here. Look in Deuteronomy chapter 22. All the way back in Deuteronomy chapter 22. Deuteronomy 22, verse 13. Says, if any man take a wife and go in unto her and hate her and give the occasions of speech against her and bring up an evil name on her and say, I took this woman and when I came to her, I found her not a maid, then shall the father of the damsel and the mother take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city and the gate. And the damsel's father shall say unto the elders, I gave my daughter unto this man to wife. He hateth her, and lo, he hath given occasion of speech against her, saying, I found not thy daughter a maid. And yet these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. And the elders of that city shall take that man and chastise him. And they shall immerse him in 100 shekels of silver and give them unto the father of the damsel, because he hath brought up an evil name upon a virgin of Israel. So what we see here is apparently this is a thing where they go, they have her, and they say she is not a maid. She was not, her father presented her as a chaste virgin. He did not do his part in protecting her, guaranteeing her. I refuse her, I hate her, I'm putting her away. This type of a thing. Well, the protection here is for the woman and for her family. Because if this guy should go and then all of a sudden find out that he hates her for some other reason, yet she is pure and she is a virgin, they can take the tokens of her virginity, the cloths it says, and present them as the proof that she was a virgin, and he is just saying that he hates her and putting her away for no reason, and he'll actually be fined and have to pay restitution because he has just trashed her name, her father's name, the family's name. So you see, this is something that happens. Now, is that what we're talking about here in the Song of Solomon, where they're going and he comes out from the feast and he says, rejoice, my brother, continue eating and drinking, all is well? I don't know. Perhaps. So the relationship is consummated. He goes on to tell them to continue to eat and to drink. Drink abundantly, O beloved. Now, it seems to be the public confirmation of the purity of a spouse, the words of the groom to his wedding party after leaving his nuptial chamber. Perhaps it's the context of Deuteronomy chapter 22, which is the strict code for guaranteeing the purity of the maid by her father. Boy, wouldn't it be something if that was still a thing today, where men actually protected their daughters for their husband, right? Rather than sending them off to college and letting them go get, have the college experience, rather than letting them go shack up and move in with guys, rather than letting them go be, just sexually promiscuous from a young age. You say, well, what's he supposed to do? Well, I find in the Bible here that it was the dad's responsibility to keep her chaste and to keep her pure and to present her as such. Be a great thing. I know in our home that's what we strive to do. In verses 2 through 7 now, I believe this to be a dream. And this is where it kind of gets, people have some different interpretations, and there's some people that like to really look at this and make all kinds of allegories about this, or say that it's saying something that it's not saying, which, maybe it could. In verse 2 here, we're in chapter 5. Verse 2, I believe this to be a dream. And I'm going to tell you, honestly, I don't know when the dream actually stops. If it's at verse 8, if it's after verse 8. Verse 2, it says, I sleep, but my heart waketh. It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh, saying, open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled. For my head is filled with dew, and my locks with drops of the night. I have put off my coat, how shall I put it on? I have washed my feet, how shall I defile them? My beloved put in his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved for him. I rose up to open to my beloved, and my hands dropped with myrrh, and my fingers with sweet-smelling myrrh upon the handles of the lock. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had withdrawn himself and was gone. My soul failed when he spake. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called, but he gave me no answer. The watchmen that went about the city found me, and they smote me. They wounded me. The keepers of the walls took away my veil from me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that you tell him that I am sick of love. I believe at this point that through verse 7 is when she has this dream, and what she has dreamed is that he comes to the door and he cannot get in. He wants to come in. Maybe he's out in the elements. He's wet. He's dripping. It's raining outside. He comes to the door. He wants to come in. Let me in. She says, my feet are washed, or maybe it's him saying my feet are washed and my coat is off, but she's not going to, get on the floor and go open the door. Maybe there's a delay in going to answer the door. Maybe while she's saying that, he says, let me in. And her bowels are moved within her. She says, he's home. She's excited, butterflies or this type of feeling, or her heart races or palpitates. And so she's got this feeling. She looks over in the keyhole by the door. She sees his hand there. He's trying to open the door and he can't open it. She goes over there. Her hands are decorated in the sweet smelling myrrh and the smells and the lotions, just like every woman that's going to, get all decked out to go to bed. She's got all of her potions. My wife was just telling me something the other night. What is it? I don't know, go to bed ugly, wake up pretty or something like this, right? That's, this is what they do. So she gets up and she goes to the door and he's gone. She gets it open and he's gone. So what does she do? Well, if this is a dream, which I believe it is, just like she did before when she went and tracked this guy down, she goes out there to go track him down and she's running the streets. Where is my love? And she comes across the watchman of the night and she says, have you seen my love? He was here. Did he go past? And rather than like in the real life, she goes past them and finds her husband, they beat her up. That sounds like a dream to me. Have you ever had dreams where just weird stuff happens that wouldn't normally happen? They beat her up. They take her veil, they rip her off. They hurt her. They wound her. She's left there, apparently. So then what we find, and I believe maybe that's when she wakes up. And then she tells her maids, go in to find my love. Go and find him. He's got to be somewhere. And I think that she goes with them too. In verse 9, in verse 8, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that you tell him that I am sick of love. I miss him dearly. It's not I'm sick of love, I don't want love anymore. It's that I miss him dearly. I'm going crazy here, thinking about these crazy things. What do we find? I believe this to be a dream. She awakes and he's not there. In her dream, he is left. Perhaps in the newness of marriage, she has a bad dream after a big happy event. Have you ever had a big happy event and then you have a dream that it's defiled? Maybe you get a pet or a dog and you're super excited about it and you have a dream that it runs away and then you wake up and you check it and you check for it to see it's there. Maybe you get a new car and then you have a dream that it gets stolen or hailstorm or vandalized. And so you wake up and you rush over and you check your new car. Something to this effect. These are shallow illustrations. But if you can imagine, this great thing has happened in her life. And then in her dream, it just goes to the worst. It just goes to the worst thing. She's on cloud nine. She just got married to the love of her life. They're together. And then she has this dream that he runs off, or that he's trying to come in and he can't get in and he leaves. And so she's got to go track him down. When I see this possibly is what's going on here. In verses 8 through 16, she is describing her husband to her maids to go and to search for him with her. This is how she describes him. Now, for time's sake, I'm not going to go read through all of it. We're going to move on there to the next chapter. But just if you go through and you read this here, you'll see how it talks about him being white and ruddy. I believe this is a nice pink hue. He's very healthy. He's the best looking man, basically. You'll know what he looks like when you see him. You'll know it's him because he's the best looking guy. He's the tallest. He's got the best hair. He's got the best skin. He's the strongest. He's got the best speech. That's who you're looking for. That's my man. Let's go find him. This is what she says here because he wasn't there. In chapter 6, what we see here is this continues with the searching, with the looking in the garden. Verses 1 and 2, it says, whither is my beloved gone, O thou fairest among women? She's asking, where is he gone? Whither is thy beloved turned aside, that we may seek him with thee? Verse 2, my beloved is gone down to his garden, to the beds of spices, to feed in the gardens, and to gather lilies. And I will say that there are a lot of references here to the gardens, okay? And so you find from the very beginning of the Bible all the way through the end of the Bible, gardens and different applications to gardens. There could be something to this that I'm, simply in its literal form overlooking. We may come across that again in a future study of kind of why does it keep going back to these gardens and what is the gardens and the symbology here or the application of these gardens. That'll be another study for another day. But what I see here is they continue looking. She says that he's in the garden. In verse 3, she finds him, and again, they are one. They are brought back together again in verse 3 of chapter 6. It says, I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feedeth me among the lilies. Remember, this is repeated. This was that first love. This is what brought her comfort, knowing that he would never leave her, that he would always be there by her side, that they were together forever. This is what she longed for. She lost him. She had to go out and to find him, and this is exactly their unity. They were brought back together again. I am his, and he is mine. Amen. So what we see here is verses 4 through 10. It is him speaking, and he comforts her. What does he say here? He says, "Thou art beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, comely, and as Jerusalem." So Tirzah here is a beautiful city of Ephraim. It's known as a beautiful city, and as comely as Jerusalem. Again, another compliment. And terrible as an army with banners. Again, another compliment. This is just saying that she is powerful. She makes an impact. He can't help but notice her when she comes in the room. That's a mighty army here, okay? So again, another compliment. "Turn away thine eyes from me, for they have overcome me. Thy hair is a flock of goats that appears from Gilead. Thy teeth are as a flock of sheep which go up from the washing, whither everyone beareth twins, and there is not one barren among them. As a piece of a pomegranate are thy temples." And it goes on from there and there. It does say in verse 8, there are 60 queens and 80 concubines. And this is where I'd mentioned at the beginning that it talks about these 60 and 80 queens and concubines here, and virgins without number. But what does he say here in 9? "My dove, my undefiled, is but one. She is the only one of her mother. She is the choice one of her that bare her. The daughters saw her and blessed her. Yea, the queens and the concubines, and they praised her." She is well beloved by all. She is the love of his life, the best thing ever, and even everybody else sees this. She's very respectful, respectable to all the others. So she goes and she finds him again in verse 4 through 10. He's speaking of comforting her. And then verse 11, this is where again it takes another turn. And you might say, what is going on here? Why are we reading this into here? What does it actually mean? What's the symbology? Well, let's look at this. If we can find a poetic, literal application here. Remember, it's poetry, okay? In verse 11, "Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the villages. Let us get up early in the vineyards." Nope, I'm sorry, that's the wrong chapter. Sorry. We're in chapter 6, verse 11. It says, "I went down into the garden of nuts to go see the fruit of the valley, and to see whether the vine flourished and the pomegranates budded. Or ever I was aware, my soul made me like the chariots of Amminadab. Return, return, O Shulamite, return, return, that we may look upon thee, what ye will see in the Shulamite, as it were the company of two armies." What I believe here is that they find out that she's pregnant. They see here that she is with child. He goes down to the vineyard to go check the fruitfulness of his vines. Again, I'm not saying that this is maybe allegorical, but it's very poetic here. And what he finds is that this is the best thing ever. And why I see this is he says, "Or ever I was aware, my soul made me like the chariots of Amminadab." And these are known to be very fast, very fast chariots. They were known for their speed. They were known for their power. It was almost, it was a saying back then. Everybody knew what it meant. I believe this to be that his heart skipped a beat. He couldn't believe it. This was the best news ever. His heart skipped a beat. And he couldn't wait to go back and to just go and continue to enjoy her and love her in this new phase, this new stage of life where she is now pregnant. She is with child. I think that's what this is talking about here. So he goes to check the fruitfulness of the vines. His heart skipped a beat. She is pregnant. This is not allegorical, but poetic, I believe. He is ecstatic upon this discovery, just like, man, we're ecstatic when our wives bear children. Amen. It's the greatest thing. It'll change your whole life. Chapter 7, here's what we see, and we get right into this. What we find here is that he again looks her over, and he's in awe of her beauty, her pregnant body. He's looking over, and when I read this, I thought, it seems to me that he's describing a heavy-set woman. I mean, when I read it, this is just what I think about. This is, how I picture this. Realizing here that she would be pregnant makes sense to me. And, I may be losing people. They're like, this is nuts. I don't know what you're even talking about here. But let's just see, and then you can tell me about it later. In verse 1, it says, "How beautiful are thy feet with shoes, O prince's daughter. The joints of thy thighs are like jewels, the work of thy hands a cunning workman. Thy navel is like a round goblet, which wanteth not liquor." So what we've got now, notice every other time he was looking at her from the top down. He's admiring her, he's looking her over. Her hair, her eyes, her cheeks of pomegranate, her neck, her chest and her breast, her belly of white and pearls and things. And that very well could be her clothing, her dress, her apparel. I'm not saying that she's necessarily, looking like these things. Remember, it's very poetic, okay? But now he's looking at her from the bottom up. And I can't help but notice in verse 2, thy navel is like a round goblet which wanteth not liquor. In my opinion, if you look at this, navel, belly button, very much like a round goblet, but if it were stretched, it would be full. You can't put any more in there. It wanteth not liquor. It's already full because it is not deep. We see here, thy belly is like an heap of wheat set about with lilies. It's a beautiful thing. He's admiring her beautiful body. And he says here, her belly is as a heap of wheat. I think that that's very romantic and that's very poetic. And it's very beautiful because he says that it is set about with lilies. Thy two breasts are like two young roes that are twins. Thy neck is a tower of ivory. Thy eyes like the fish pools in Heshbon, which are beautiful, by the way. The fish pools are clear and vibrant and full of life. And this is what he's saying her eyes are like. The gate of Beth-ribbon, thy nose is like the tower of Lebanon, which looketh toward Damascus. Thine head upon thee is like Carmel. The hair of thy head is like purple. The king is held in the galleries. How fair and how pleasant art thou, O love, for delight. So just going on here and just really just talking about how much still he's in love with her. The continuing on of the relationship here. You see how now this has come through from the first looks to the courting, to the marriage, to the consummation, and now coming through this beautiful time of life now where she's pregnant and bearing child, and he is in love with her beautiful pregnant body. And I'm not trying to make it weird or anything, but how many times do we see here how he's just enamored and he's in awe with her beauty? She's a beautiful woman. And I believe this even from inside out, she's a beautiful woman, right? And this is how he sees her. If she were going to describe herself, it would probably be different. But this is how he sees her. He loves her. Man, we love our wives. There is no woman more beautiful than our wife. Amen? Yeah, a room of beautiful people. There is nobody more attractive to us than our spouse, right? Strangely, my wife finds me attractive. How is that? We're in love. We love each other. This is, what could you go through where you say, you know what? I just don't love you anymore. You know what? I used to love you, but I don't love you anymore. This is an unquenchable love here. Cannot be quenched with all the waters, it says. So what do we find here? He looks her over, and then I'm going to tell you she loves to hear that. He's just showering her with these accolades and these compliments, and she loves to hear it. She probably doesn't feel the greatest. She probably doesn't feel like she looks the way he says she does, but she loves to hear it. Men, we need to make sure that we continue to speak these things to our wives, that we need to be sure that we tell our wives how much we love them and how beautiful they are through all seasons of life. They don't look the same as they did when we got married 50 years ago, but we love them and they're beautiful to us, and we need to not forget to tell them that. Verse 10, we see here in chapter 7, verse 10, it says, I am my beloved's, and his desire is towards me. Now, here's what I see about this. This, again, is the product. And what she speaks of here is his desire towards me. And I can't help but when I read this to go back to Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. Genesis 3:16. This is a well-known passage here. We understand this. This is the curse that's put on the woman to be in subjection unto men. In Genesis chapter 3, but notice what it says here. And again, I know that we're not talking, we're talking about an account in the Bible, not the narrator of the Bible. We're not talking about something contradictory to what the Bible says in any point here, but I want to show you this. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 16, it says, unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow shalt thou bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. We have no problem with that verse. That's exactly what we see. We see that it is natural. It is put upon the woman to be in subjection unto her husband. That's not derogatory. That's the way it is. That's the way it works. Okay? But what we find here is actually saying then that it says that his, let me go back to this, his desire is toward me. Now, I will tell you, the way I see this is that this is the proof of his love towards her. She knows that he isn't going anywhere. He is not in subjection to her, but he is right there with her. Through thick and thin, always there. He's not going anywhere, and she knows that. Not that he is subject unto her, but they are one. And there again is this beautiful unity that we see. 3 times now we have seen a call to this unity, right? I am his and he is mine. They're beloved. And we see here now how his love is toward her, so much so that she knows that he is not going anywhere. And I'm going to tell you that women need to know this today. Women need to know that their husband isn't going anywhere. They need to know that I am his and he is mine. And I'll tell you, just like I would tell anybody, and I'll always tell everybody this, that in your arguments with your spouse, in your communication in your home, you should never bring up divorce. That should never be an option. It should never be on the tip of your tongue. If you should think it, you should not vocalize it. I tell you, you shouldn't even think it. Take it off the table, okay? Why would you throw that out there in an argument? You've just ruined now her security in knowing that I am his and he is mine. As one, we could work through this. As one, we're in love. I trust you that you're not going to go anywhere. But you throw that out there, and I don't even know which way is up anymore, right? This is what happens. She knows that he's not going anywhere. Just like she was subject unto him in the garden and still are, and that's the order. He's subject unto her in this sense. Not necessarily that he is below her or subject unto her per se, but that he is there for her and will always be there for her, okay? Chapter 8 closes the story, closes the song. It's a beautiful song that we've gone through so far. It's not perverted, is it? I haven't read anything here that's perverted or twisted or sideways. This is beautiful that we're reading here. And it shows this whole process here. And I hope you remember the process. I hope that you can remember back to your first love. I hope that you remember the feelings that you had for the one. Even if the one that you're married to now wasn't the first one that you were married to, you still had this time. You still went through this process. You still should be able to tap in to these feelings here. Verses 1 and 2 of chapter 8. It says, "Oh, that thou wert my brother, that sucked the breast of my mother. When I should find thee without, I would kiss thee, yet I should not be despised. I would lead thee and bring thee into my mother's house, who would instruct me. I would cause thee to drink of my spiced wine in the juice of my pomegranate. His left hand would be under my head, and his right hand should embrace me." This is a beautiful thing right here. And so what we see is that this is the desires, again, to go into her mother's house. And perhaps it's because this is going to be the instruction in childbirth or childcare. We know that the Bible tells us that it's the older women's job to teach the younger women. And what is it that they're going to teach them? Is how to love their children. So women would go to their mother's house and they would instruct them in these ways. Perhaps this is what I see here. They're going back and they're getting this instruction. She is going to comfort him. She is going to take care of him in this time. Verses 3 and 4 here talks about that close physical touch, which is the same as at the beginning. And the considerate warning to not awake her lover before he is ready. This is something that we have seen, I think, 3 or 4 times now. The consideration to tell the others, to tell the other maids, don't wake him up before he's ready. Don't wake him up early. And he tells them, don't wake her up before she's ready. You know, this type of thing. Very considerate, very loving. I love to see that, just the consideration between spouses, and I'll talk about that in just one second here. But this close physical touch, this is what she longs for. This touch. Remember the touch when they were dating? Remember the hand behind the head and around the body? And it was beautiful, and it wasn't perverted, and it wasn't sexual, and it wasn't even physical in a sense of physical sexual relationship. It was just having each other and holding each other. And that's what we find here at the very end. After all this has transpired, this is what we find here, that same touch, which is so important to her. And then in verse 7, this is what we drew from. "Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be contemned." Love cannot be bought. If it could be bought, it would be worthless, okay? It's been said, there's a famous quote out there, and it says, "No woman can command her affections. Where they do not rise spontaneously, they can never exist." This is to say that you cannot buy love. You can't, be a Hugh Hefner, if you'll, allow me to just use this illustration here, and just buy your way into love. Have all these young things love you. It doesn't work like that. It can't be bought. If it could be bought, it would be worthless. But what we find here is at the very, very end of this, men, it's just like you and I. After all these great times at home and with our wives, at the end of the weekend, what do we have to do? We have to go back to work, right? We got to go back to work, don't we? Well, look, if you would, down in verse 13. He must go back to work, and so he's desiring here that she would send him off with a goodbye. It says, thou that dwellest in the gardens, the companions hearken to thy voice. cause me to hear it. Go on to work. Go out there and work with the guys. I know that you're needed. Go out there and work. But here's what she says to him. Make haste, my beloved, and be thou like to a roe or to a young hart upon the mountains of spices. She says here, hurry home. Hurry home. Go on to work, but you'll find me here. Hurry home. She knows that he's going to go and he's going to do what he needs to do, and he's going to hurry home. So men and women, there are things that we need to keep in our marriage. First of all, Song of Solomon showed us attraction and pursuit. And that's not wrong. That's what drives us, okay? It's weird now that there's people that are 20 years old that don't have a desire to go and to pursue the opposite sex. That's weird. What's normal is that we have a desire to go and to pursue and to find, okay? What we find is this back and forth flirting and these compliments. That's healthy. Don't stop. It was there at the beginning. Keep it up. We find the importance of touch. It was there at the beginning. Keep it up. Don't stop. We find compassion and consideration. Friend, that's the opposite of selfishness. And what is it that kills so many marriages and so many relationships is that selfishness, that selfish motive where I'm more important than my spouse. I want this. I'm doing this for me. I'm taking time for myself. I'm spending money on myself. I just need this right now. I. What do we find here? We find care and compassion and consideration. Church, we need to know that the effort needed to reach out in the absence of your spouse is important. When we find that there is a tension or a draw or a wanting, something left here, make the effort to go and to actually restore. Don't put up a wall and try to have a tit for tat or to see how bad it can get. Reach out in the absence of your spouse. And then what we find here is true unity. We said it 4 times at least. I am his and he is mine. This is what we desire. This is what every spouse desires. Women, this is what your husband desires. Husbands, this is what your wife desires. I am his and he is mine. What a beautiful hymn that was that we sang last week. I told my wife, I said, goodness, that would have been a great one to sing today. But think about this, the last thing, we need to realize the importance of going through trials together and your spouse knowing that you aren't going anywhere. Now, life throws a lot more things at us than what we read about here in the Song of Solomon, right? This is like the very beginning. This is the kid stuff. This is when it's still good, right? Life goes on beyond this. But we need to remember that together, unified couple, husband and wife, you can make it through all those trials. You can get through it all together. And this love that we have for each other is an unquenchable love. It can't be washed out with all the greatest waters. How many floods have we experienced, recently in this recent year here in the Midwest? No amount of water can quench this love that these ones have for each other. Amen? Let's pray. God in heaven, we love you.